In today's video, we will learn about the movement along the demand curve, which is also known as change in quantity demanded, and shift of the demand curve, which is also known as change in demand. Let's begin with movement along the demand curve or change in quantity demand. Now, movement of the demand curve is defined as when quantity demanded of a commodity changes as a result of change in the price of the commodity, other factors remaining fixed, other factors affecting demand remaining fixed. So the most important point here is that the movement along the demand curve occurs only because of the change in the price of the commodity, and all other factors affecting demand such as income of the consumer, taste and preferences of consumers, etc., which we had done in one of the previous videos, all those factors remain fixed. Okay. Now, movement along the demand curve or change in quantity demanded is of two types. It is of two types. The first one is extension and the second one is contraction. Now, what do we mean by extension of demand and contraction of demand? As the word suggests, in extension of demand, the quantity demanded of the commodity increases. Now, as per the law of demand, when does the quantity demanded of the commodity increase? When the price of the commodity falls, right? So, what is extension of demand? All other factors remaining constant, price of the commodity falls such that quantity demanded of the commodity increases. This is called extension of demand. Now, what do we mean by contraction of demand? In this case, all other factors remaining constant, price of the commodity rises such that quantity demanded of the commodity falls. Now, we can explain this graphically. Let us draw an ordinary demand curve. Suppose this is the initial price and this is the initial quantity. Now suppose that the price of the commodity rises and reaches P1, quantity demanded will fall and it will reach Q1. So let this point be A and this point be B. So the movement along the demand curve from the point A to the point B, in which the quantity demanded of the commodity has fallen, this movement is called contraction. Now suppose that the price of the commodity has fallen and it has reached P2, and similarly the quantity has increased and reached Q2. So we see that the price of the commodity has fallen, due to which quantity demanded has increased. So this, what is this? This movement from point A to point C, this is known as extension. Right? So we see that movement along the demand curve is of two types, extension and contraction. Extension is shown by downward movement and contraction is shown by upward movement. Upward movement of the demand curve, right? So we are done with extension and contraction of demand. Let us move on to the shift of the demand curve or change in demand. The shift of the demand curve means change in quantity demanded that occurs because of change in factors other than the own price of the commodity. Right? Here the own price of the commodity is fixed, whereas some of the other factors affecting demand such as income, taste and preferences, future expectations, etc., they are changing, which is leading to a change in the quantity demanded, but the price is remaining fixed here. So we understand that there is a difference between a shift and a movement along the demand curve, because in the movement it is the price that is changing and all other factors affecting demand are remaining constant. But in the shift of the demand curve, it is the price that is fixed, but one or two or maybe more of the factors affecting demand, they are changing. So like before, shift is also of two types. The first one being increase in demand and decrease in demand. As the names suggest, increase in demand means that quantity demanded of the commodity increases because of some of the factors affecting demand, price remaining constant. Suppose that the income of the consumer increases, and if it is a normal commodity, the quantity demanded of the commodity will increase, right? And similarly, suppose that the population of the country has fallen. Now what will happen? The quantity demanded in the entire economy will fall, right? So there will be a decrease in the quantity demanded. But make sure to keep in mind that the price of the commodity is remaining fixed throughout. The shift in the demand curve can also be determined graphically. We draw a simple demand curve D0, which is the original demand curve. This is the original price and this is the original quantity. Now suppose that income of the consumer has increased. What will happen? Price of the commodity is remaining fixed. It is just the income that has increased. So what will happen? The demand curve will shift to the right. There will be a shift of the demand curve and we will reach a new demand curve D1. Note that the price of the commodity is remaining constant. It is just the quantity that has increased and reached Q1. Now, suppose that the income of the consumer falls. Now what will happen? Again, see that the price of the commodity is remaining constant. It is just the income of the consumer which has changed. What will happen is that the demand curve will shift leftwards and it will reach D2. There will be a leftward shift along in the demand curve and the price is remaining constant. We have just reached a new quantity level, which is Q2. The price is same throughout. It is just the quantity that is changing because of the shift in the demand curve. Now, which one of these is an increase in demand? The movement from A to B is increase and the movement from A to C is decrease. These are the two types of shift in the demand curve. The first difference between a movement of the demand curve and a shift of the demand curve is quite obvious, and it comes from the very definition, which is that here in this case price changes, whereas in the shift price is constant. This is a very basic difference between movement and shift. The second difference is the difference in the two types. It is of two types. Extension and contraction, and this is also of two types, which are increase and decrease. The third difference is a very important difference, which states that there is an upward or downward movement in the same demand curve. Notice that here there is only one demand curve in which we are either moving upward or we are going downward. But in the case of a shift, there is a rightward or leftward shift of entire demand curve. So in this case, the entire demand curve is shifting and we are getting a new demand curve, which is either to the right or to the left of the initial demand curve. But here, the demand curve is the same throughout. It is just that we are either moving upward or downward along it. And the final difference between these two is the graphical representation, which we just did uh, in the explanation. So with this we come to an end of our video today. If you have any doubts, then you can write them to me in the comment section and I will surely reply to them. Thank you.